Hello and thanks for watching another edition of ARFCOM News. Today I want to tell you about the biggest threat to gun rights we are likely to face this year and how we can use Bloomberg's own groups to fight it. Plus, lots more. But before we get started, I want to tell you about the cruelty-free, gluten-free, non-GMO, zero trans fat night vision products offered to you by our friends at TNVC.com. Just like Mom used to make. If you like seeing stuff more than not seeing stuff, take a look at our sponsor, TNVC.com, your source for quality night vision gear to make you the bump in the night. Well, folks, this is it. This is what I warned you about. I told you not to get too distracted by HR 127, and I told you we would see a flood of control freak proposals, which would seem a lot more reasonable. I've also been saying for a long time that universal background checks are the most likely thing to actually get passed. All gun laws are unconstitutional and an affront to human rights, but bans on certain classes of pew makers are politically difficult and an easy target for court challenges. The prohibitionists are well aware of this too, but the general public doesn't know or care that universal background checks are truly just another name for registration. They don't understand how dangerous it is for the government to have a searchable database of everyone who is armed, which they can conveniently compare against their lists of dissidents and wrong-thinkers. They haven't stopped to consider that if the government has oodles of weapons we don't know about, then why shouldn't the people have some the government doesn't know about? And they don't know that registration is always the prelude to confiscation. Universal background checks are just a funny way of spelling universal registration, and registries are always used to confiscate without exception. And finally, the normies tend not to ever consider the fact that if you can trust someone enough to let them out of prison, then why wouldn't you trust them with a gun? Or more importantly, let's turn that around the other direction, and I want you to explain to me why it is that if I can't trust someone with a gun, why should we be letting them out of prison in the first place? To be clear, the pending legislation includes language which explicitly does not authorize a registry, but that's nothing more than lip service. The Forms 4473, which we fill out when we complete a transfer, already act as a de facto registry, and the BATFE has been pushing for years to get approval to digitize all of them and run optical character recognition against them to form a searchable database. In the minds of politicians and lawyers, that still wouldn't be a registry, technically speaking, but to you and I, there is no substantive difference. Now, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir. You gentle folks know universal background checks are just code for registration and that registration always leads to confiscation, but UBC sounds reasonable to the normies because they don't know any better. That's why I believe it has a decent chance of actually passing, and that's why I need you guys to really lean in and push on this one. To start, you need to convince everyone in your circle of friends and family to oppose UBC. That doesn't mean posting caps lock tirades full of cliche sound bites. That means understanding where they come from, accepting them for who they are, and making points based on their own values. You gotta meet people where they are, folks. If we're gonna win this, you have to stop alienating everyone who's a little different from you or ranting about social issues which aren't related to gun rights. Remember, the civil unrest and social injustice we witnessed over the last year both contributed heavily to the spike in gun sales and produced more than 8 million new gun owners. Countless more have doubtless begun to view gun ownership in a different light than they used to. Many of these folks might be your political opposition in other topics, but that's no reason they have to be opposed on gun rights, unless you make enemies of them. Their minds are ready to change. Now is the time to end gun prohibition as a political wedge issue. When you talk to these folks on social media, remember you aren't just talking to them, you're trying to convince everyone reading the thread as well. You won't change any minds by losing your patience and slinging insults. Always take the high road, always be gracious and give them the benefit of the doubt. If they start spouting off with typical vitriolic grabber cliches while you are posting thoughtful, well-considered points, you have already won. Remember that the reason control freaks often rely on emotional anecdotes is not because they don't have any empirical data. You can collect statistical evidence to support any claim you wish to make. The reason is emotion is compelling. Don't be afraid to relay personal stories about why government intrusion is harmful. If you loaned a pistol to your neighbor in apartment 2C when she was being stalked by an abusive ex, that would be illegal under these new laws. And if she went to buy one for herself, HR 1446 could force her to wait up to 3 weeks in order to get the tools she needs to defend her children from the kind of man who would walk right through a restraining order as easily as through the Arcadia door in the back of her apartment.
I won't survive 30 days.
Tell them to imagine how it feels to go to sleep every night wondering if he's out there drinking and raging. Of course, it's not enough just to change the minds on social media. We have to advocate directly to the Congress critters. There are 3 UBC bills pending at the federal level right now which demand your attention. HR 1446, HR 8, and an as yet untitled Senate bill. HR 8 is particularly troubling because it is more narrowly focused than HR 1446, and it is supported by Republicans as well as Democrats. Folks, this is not the time to depend on partisan politics to save you. We need to contact every single politicritter and tell them they will lose their next primary if they support any one of these bills. Thankfully, oligarch Michael Bloomberg's AstroTurf groups Everytown and Moms Who Need Action have made that convenient for us. If you want to do your part and do it on Richie Rich's dime, please pause the video right now and call 888-728-4576. Ignore that nonsense the mom looking for action says and wait to be connected to your Congress critters. Tell them UBC makes it more complicated and expensive to acquire defense tools which disproportionately harms women, minorities, and the poor. Tell them regardless of language to the contrary, it creates a backdoor registration which would be used to confiscate arms and suppress dissent. Ask Democrats if they would feel comfortable with Donald Trump having a list of every Democrat who owns a gun. Ask Republican lawmakers if they would be comfortable with Joe Biden having a list of every Republican with a gun. Regardless of which party your politicritters belong to, tell them not only will you vote against them, you will campaign for their opposition in the next primary if they support UBC. But I believe we should offer alternatives when possible. Tell those Congress critters a better solution is to open a web portal for the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, which would allow any person to make a background check on themselves by providing their name, social, DOB, etc. The system would then generate a key which another person could enter on the same site. This system would show them only the first and last name of the person being checked and a proceed, delayed, or denied response just like the current NICS. The seller of a gun could simply confirm the name matches a government-issued photo ID. But because anyone can use this system for any reason, even if no gun is being transferred, it would be totally useless as a registry. At the same time, it would allow anyone who wants to participate to conduct a background check without the additional cost and hassle of going through a dealer. Our tax dollars are paying for this system already. Why shouldn't we be able to use it? Parallel to this system, police departments should be required to submit stolen gun serial numbers to a national database so anyone can check whether a gun is stolen before completing a purchase. Not even FFL holders can do that right now. Politicians have been trying to paint all veterans as unstable wackos for years. They have used the Veterans Administration to deny veterans of their right to be armed simply for seeking treatment. Of course, this is the opening gambit in a move to stop civilians from purchasing a gun if they've received mental health treatment, which itself is just one step on the long, incremental road to total prohibition. But it's a particularly stupid and self-defeating step. I mean, this is a special kind of stupid. If I know I can't legally buy a gun after seeking mental health treatment, I'm less likely to seek treatment. That doesn't make me less of a threat, it makes me even more dangerous. For the love of everything good in this world, what would possess you to discourage people from getting the help they need? You're not stopping them from buying a gun, because even if they don't already own guns, they will just avoid treatment rather than getting denied. So now you have someone armed with a rapidly deteriorating mental condition who is afraid to get help for his mental illness. When you hear about stuff like this, it's really hard not to see it as a willful attempt to cause problems, but I have to remind myself it is never wise to ascribe anything to malice which can be explained adequately by incompetence. But the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act, introduced by Representative Liz Cheney and Representative Mike Bost, would prohibit the VA from entering a veteran as a prohibited possessor in the National Instant Criminal Background Check System unless the veteran was found by a court to be a threat to himself or others. So while you're on the phone with your Congress critters telling them to oppose universal background checks, please tell them to support the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act. Tell them it protects the constitutional rights of the men and women who bleed to protect our Constitution. Tell them it is wrong to deny veterans of their constitutional right to due process. Tell them it is wrong to discourage anyone from getting mental health treatment. Gundustry news! Good news for fans of 223 short. NATO has standardized the 35-year-old 5.7 by 28mm cartridge. While I'm sure it is more accurate and effective than a staff weapon, 5.7 has never really caught on in military or law enforcement circles because it's a sort of middle child which is equally bad at a lot of things. It's pretty okay as a pistol cartridge, but produces a lot of muzzle flash and blast in comparison to 9mm, and its overall length results in a very bulky grip. The cultists down below in the comment section will no doubt cite the Fort Hood incident as indication of its effectiveness, but to be blunt, it would have to suck a great deal not to work at contact distance from behind a compliant victim. 5.7 is slower, shorter, and lighter than rifle cartridges, so it's very controllable, but projectile weight and muzzle velocity can be pretty disappointing in comparison to 5.56. Of course, it isn't really fair to compare it to regular pistol or rifle cartridges, as it was intended from the beginning to be a PDW cartridge. That is, it's for guns that are intended to be carried a lot and shot very little, like a modern M1 carbine. And in that role, it does pretty okay, but reports from folks who have kicked in a lot of doors holding a P90 indicate it really only works well when you go cyclic for half a mag or so on the thoracic cavity. I guess if I was a vehicle crew member, I'd rather have a P90 than an M9, I guess. If you believe I have committed heresy against your most holy cartridge, tell me down there. Darkstorm Industries has made a name for themselves with their featureless rifle line for our brothers and sisters behind enemy lines. As much as it pains me to see Eugene Stoner's, peace be upon him, design defiled in such a manner, I know if I lived in California, I would appreciate having a rifle in a configuration I could take out in public without fear of arrest. But DSI also makes normal rifles and recently announced their DS-25 Typhoon, which is a .30 Hate caliber AR variant. It's available in a standard rifle configuration as well as a non-NFA firearm design, which DSI says is not a rifle because it doesn't have a stock and isn't designed to be fired from the shoulder. It isn't a pistol because it has a 12.5-inch barrel and a vertical foregrip, meaning it is intended to be fired with two hands. And it is not an AOW because the overall length is greater than 26 inches. The DS-25 Typhoon weighs 6.7 pounds, making it one of the lightest AR-10 style firearms ever made, and it comes with all the modern bells and whistles you would expect. List price is $1,500, and DSI expects to begin shipping this summer. Well, friends, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoy watching these things because I sure like making them for you. Do you want to know a secret to beating the ammo shortage? AR15.com/deals is constantly updated with scores on ammo, guns, and accessories so you can get the drop on the neckbeards before they snatch up all the good stuff. So bookmark AR15.com/deals and check AR15.com/deals every day. If you want to help us keep bringing you banger content like this, please support the folks who support us. Not only does TNVC.com give you night vision with that cool, refreshing, never bitter taste that goes down smooth, they also have mounts, lights, and all sorts of other gear to make you the bump in the night. And if you want a baller cap like mine or other ARFCOM swag, you can get it at brownells.com. Or you can buy fly shirts like this one in our Teespring store. Or if you'd like to try your luck and see if you can win your choice of rad shirt from our Teespring store, post a comment containing the phrase "all gun control is racist" in the YouTube comments, and I will arbitrarily and unilaterally choose the best one. I love you.